Welcome to Care, Share and Inspire, the Climate Wisdom Studio live from COP28 here in Dubai, UAE. We bring together experts from science, spirituality and politics to explore new solutions for the unfolding climate disaster. Myself, I'm Golo Pilz. I'm the advisor on renewable energy for the Brahma Kumaris, and I will be tonight's moderator. With just over 2 days remaining, the official schedule, COP28 is now immersed in the nitty-gritty of the negotiations. This is the part that will determine if Dubai will be a success or not. The texts are riddled with disagreements and unresolved alternatives, including on the crunch question of whether to phase out fossil fuels, phase down, or otherwise come to terms with the root cause of climate change, fossil fuels. 31 years after the Earth Summit has launched, this discussion is astonishingly still going on and has reached now finally to this COP. The Climate Wisdom Studio will keep you up to date and posted on further developments. I'm very glad tonight I have 3 experts with me, distinguished speakers. I would like to introduce to you. First, Kekashan Basu. You are the founder and president of Green Hope Foundation. You advocate peace, children's rights, education for sustainable development, nuclear disarmament, gender equality and climate justice. You are the youngest councillor of the World Future Council, the youngest trustee of the Parliament of World Religion, and a Kids' Right Youngsters member and winner of International Children Peace Prize. Welcome to our panel discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Then I have with us Kanika Devan. You are the founder and chair of Car Design Atelier, and you are the group president of Promco. You are a well-known interior designer and World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. You are a former investment banker and campaigner against corruption. Welcome to our panel discussion.
Thank you.
And with us is Sister Maureen Goodman. You are the program director for the Brahma Kumaris in UK and the representative to the UN in Vienna. You have been to several climate change conferences before, and you have a deep interest in the spiritual and ethical dimensions of climate change. You have been a long-term involved in the interreligious dialogue, and you represent the Brahma Kumaris on the board of religious leaders of the Elia Interfaith Institute, and you are a spiritual ambassador to the Living Peace Project. So very distinguished speakers here. Welcome very much.
Thank you.
This brings us now to the beginning of our panel discussion. And Kekashan, let me ask you, you founded the Green Hope Foundation. I think you were pretty young when you did that, 12 or so. 12 years old. And you're trying to motivate the younger generation to engage in sustainable projects. Green Hope is also accredited to the COP. And do you think the voice of the young generation is loud enough? And more important question, do the decision makers actually listen to the voice of the young generation? What's your impression from this COP?
Well, I think this COP has been very successful in the aspect of bringing more young people to the table. My first ever COP was 11 years ago, COP18 in Doha in 2012. And that was when the UNFCCC still had its very archaic rule of no under 18s allowed into COP at all, only on Future Generations Day. So when I was invited to speak there, it was just on one day. So when I think back to that time and then think about it now, when there's so many young people there, not just, tokenistically, but young people in civil society, young people in the private sector, academia, and young negotiators as well, and in the government, it is really heartening to see that there is a presence of young people much more meaningfully than was there 11 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even at the last COP, for example. But, for me, it's not about how loud our voices are in the stereotypical sense where young people are often tokenized as just demonstrating outside and blaming the government and private sector and others, for us and for my team and I at Green Hope Foundation, how loud our voice is determined by the actions that we take on the ground, the work that we do. That is what speaks for itself. So for us, I think there is slightly more recognition that young people are not, just outside blaming others. We are actually working on the ground as well. But I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in that sense of recognizing young people as change makers who actually do the work themselves rather than just blame others. And that narrative is something that we at Green Hope Foundation are slowly trying to change, whether that's by harnessing clean energy to build schools or whether that's doing mass mangrove plantations. It's something that we are trying to, that change is something that we are trying to bring about.
Wonderful. Just to let you know, from Brahma Kumaris, we had also a youth delegation here. And yesterday, our whole team went for mangrove plantation.
No way.
Wow.
We went for a mangrove plantation on the rest day of COP. And it was just so wonderful because we were literally like, this is turning the commitments that are being talked about into ground level action. And mangroves play such an important part of the ecosystem in this country. So it was just a wonderful way to do our bit for that. And it contributed for us, from our side, our 76,000 mangroves we've planted globally. So it contributed to our very small effort to bring about that change. So it's really wonderful to know that it all went out for that as well.
So it's good news that the youngsters get more impact, and let's hope this COP goes in the right direction.
Absolutely.
That brings me to you, Kanika. You worked on major infrastructure projects down to efficiency, maybe using natural construction material, and also probably a circular economy where you recycle everything. Here at COP, we come to the crucial point to increase substantial our national determined contribution to stay below 1.5 degree. And I think the latest forecast at the moment we're heading towards 2.7 or so if we go ahead with what has been promised right now. So let's hope COP is coming up with some improved NDCs. And another big elephant in the room is the question if we shall phase out fossil fuels or not. You are aware of the business interest on one side and what is needed urgently to save the planet. Can you see both interests come together and a pathway emerging to save humanity?
Yes, I think, first of all, I'd like to start with what is happening during this COP28. I've noticed hope has emerged, especially for business, public-private partnerships to emerge, because you are now seeing, I just came from the presidential ministerial lounges where the negotiations are taking place, and we are interacting with private sector, the government is interacting with the private sector, being more open. And a very interesting part of it was that there are also government and heads of state that are starting to open to a non-hierarchical structure in terms of protocol and policy. So the other day I just had a discussion with the president of Colombia one-on-one spontaneously. And immediately in 10 minutes, when he understood the zero waste circularity that we've been embodying for so many years, he understood that we did sustainable mining, circular economy process of aluminium, steel recycling from 1975, as far as family business is concerned, and the business that I set up in 2001, which is not just interior design, it is a vertically integrated process from mine ownership to the end cycle of development and just transition, because the workforce is very important during the build out of buildings. Why? Because if they are healthy, happy, and motivated, the attrition rates are reduced. For example, in Delhi airport, we even had a spiritual meditation take place so that strikes would be reduced, so that the diversity of the workforce from different states and countries would be cohesive. When that happens, you're able to finish your projects in time, and then they participate in a zero waste, where we, for example, bring the waste back to our factories to reprocess and use for aquaponic farming, use for zero waste art, recrush. So this is something that heads of state, when you approach them, they understand that you need action on the ground, but the weight of action on the ground is not Instagram hashtags, is showcasing those industries which have been doing this for eons, because those are the industries, apart, rather than the oligopolies oligopolistic structure that we see, let's say the Microsofts or the Googles, where we're saying, okay, they should only be in charge of the decision making. No, they understand that you need to go back to the bricks and mortar in order to see the change. And now this COP, we're seeing a little bit of that, a little bit. So I do have hope that in the future that those solutions can emerge between public-private partnerships.
Wonderful, that's great news. And I just read a study by Deloitte for the World Economic Forum, and they projected all the income business which will be generated in a transition towards clean technology for the next until 2050 or so, and they projected 43 trillion US dollar business in the transition process towards clean technologies. So for business, it's a golden opportunity. If we don't save planet anyhow, there won't be much of a business. So I mean, that's anyhow common sense. But it's nice to hear that decision makers are opening up, and you see a pathway emerging that both interests can be come together. Let me ask you, I come to you, Maureen. Right at the beginning of the conference, they agreed upon the loss and damage mechanism. It was a bit of a breakthrough, maybe also a bit of a public relations stunt. And many details have to be still worked out, and it's already clear it comes a bit late and it's not enough money, and the distribution mechanism is also not clear. But anyhow, it's a big step forward in the right direction. But after all, it would be easier to reduce the emissions because no money can pay for the damage at the end of the day of our planet. Interestingly, if we look in history, the developed nations are somehow responsible for 80% of the emissions which are causing climate change right now. So this is also a question of climate justice, which is a very delicate topic. It's the North-South conflict and so on. What has to be done, as per your opinion, to bring this together, to balance out this historical injustice?
Thank you for the question. Yes, let us celebrate at least that the fund has been operationalized. That's a step forward. We know that it's not enough and a lot more needs to be pledged. But I think it's very important that the way in which the fund is administered, that it doesn't increase the burden of debt of the poorer nations or the developing nations. I was pleased to know that it actually is a grant, it's not a loan. But even then, I think, as you said, there's no real clarity as to what are the strings that are attached. And, and it's very important that the fund also does not make the poorer nations more dependent on the richer nations. So that we have to wait and see as it's played out. And I think that is a key part of climate justice. And, when you have one section of humanity wanting to dominate another section, you can't have justice. Where there isn't gender equality, you can't have justice. And so we really need to, I feel, shift our vision. You can call it a paradigm shift, but actually it needs to happen not so much externally, but internally. And so if we can understand and view all life as sacred, that would be the first shift in awareness. And that would have an impact on how things are then developed and applied. And also understanding that we are one human family. And I know it's very easy to say those words, and people say it often, but it's about going beyond all the labels that we get so stuck in, whether it's nationality, position, whether it's ethnicity, etc., etc. We're absolutely stuck in those labels and those identities, and there's a lot of arrogance and greed connected with that. And so therefore, justice just isn't possible. So it's rising above these divisions, because there are so many things that can divide us. So rising above those divisions so that we can really begin to act as one. And so that sort of consciousness shift will have a huge impact.
Great, that's a wonderful inspiration. And I think if we all would understand that we're one family living on this world all together, it will solve a lot of differences we are seeing right now. And we all would move in the right direction together. This brings me to Kekashan. You believe that everybody, young or old, has a change maker potential within, on the inside. And you're trying to bring up the best in everybody. Climate change is such a huge problem that often youngsters are depressed or they withdraw because they think, what can I do? You know, like a sort of hopelessness or so. How do you motivate people, how you inspire them to engage in climate action or to plant trees or collect waste or so on? How inspire them to raise towards higher ambitions?
Absolutely. That is a really big problem because the alarmist approach that is surrounding climate change that's become very popular, it's often propagated by the Western media as well. And what we see working on the ground is that, every action counts, no matter how small it might seem. Every action does count, and every stakeholder group has a role to play in mitigating, adapting to, or just building resilience to the climate crisis. And the way we see our work relating to climate, we know that we're not going to see the results for a lot of our work right away because we've already caused a lot of damage. And, with climate being a wicked problem, we don't have a single, one single solution that's going to solve all of its impacts. So it's important to address it as a wicked complex problem and not a tame problem in that sense. And that, with that understanding and with that addressing climate change in that way comes actually taking those actions that are localized as well, because you have very unique impacts of climate change all across the world. And that is something that we recognize in our work. And the way we see our work is we use an oak tree analogy. Like if you plant an oak tree seed, you're not going to see the tree grow in just one day. It's going to take time and it's going to take effort. It's going to take sunlight, water, but you are going to see the results one day. And that's kind of how we see our work and just climate action and in general, because our future generations are going to benefit from a lot of these actions that we take. Maybe not us right away, but that's all right, because we as responsible global citizens are working to secure the future of not just the planet, but humanity in general. And that is kind of the mindset that we propagate when we work with people, regardless of age, all across the world. With our younger generations in particular, we, the word hope is in our name, Green Hope Foundation. That's why I named it that. We keep it alive through these ground level actions that we undertake all across the world. And with children in particular, we, of course, engage them in activities where they are able to see the results firsthand. So, for instance, our Grow Your Own Food campaign is focused on children across the world, and it teaches them how to grow their own food, no matter where they are. So school, terrace, backyard, garden, doesn't matter. It's just like them kind of seeing the fruits of their labor firsthand and being okay, this is an action that I took and it's contributed in a tiny way, but it has contributed to trying to mitigate or adapt to the climate crisis. So that is how we maintain hope. We understand, of course, that climate change is a really terrible issue, and of course it can, bring about many feelings, but we need to keep that hope alive. And the way we keep that hope alive is through ground level actions. And by implementing those solutions and seeing the positive impact is how we kind of move people away from that alarmist approach to a more hopeful, optimistic approach.
Thanks very much for sharing the story. And I think I've seen one of your projects. You're cleaning the beaches of the plastic. And we did similar project in India. And we collected 3 tractors of plastic waste, and afterwards the people were so happy to see the area has become clean. There is the waste, and we sold off the waste, and it was a win-win situation actually, because you could see immediately the result of the action, and that gave people hope that they can do something, that they can become a change maker. Wonderful, lovely. This brings me to Kanika. At the heart of your mind is to improve the livelihood of people, and I heard in one of your talks you mentioned the journey to happiness. And it's the journey to life improvement, I think you said. And if we are happy and content, health gets better. And usually our interaction with the people around us is also improving. Happiness is, however, a state of mind. It doesn't come automatically. And how to achieve this state of mind, being happy. Can you elaborate a bit how you came up with this idea and how it works?
So what made me come up with this idea is that I felt there is an imbalance in the environment that we live in, the current state. And obviously, that's why we're also addressing climate crisis, but I actually call it an environmental crisis. And I feel that means an imbalance between animal kingdom, between different generations, between nature and the elements around us. So when those are in sync and in symbiosis, then what happens is a neutral state is achieved. When one thing is out of balance in the environment is what we're facing. That's why we have 28 COPs. So basically, that is how it started. And I would say that it started with the respect for the elderly, as much as I respect the youth. Youth is amazing at creativity, and we need both. Youth can imagine, and our imaginations can run wild with AI, with tech. And again, we've come to this built environment because of our imagination. We moved away from what history had in success of environmental balance. For example, taking our vegetables in baskets. I remember my grandfather would go in baskets, and then we moved to plastic bags for some reason. Now we need to go back. Solar cookers. I was just in a session where they were making the announcements, and Secretary Kerry said, yes, solar cookers is what we must invest in. Well, Africa and India has been doing that for a long time. So it came with this idea of let's have this, again, interspecies, intergenerational, as Sister Maureen had said, the fact that it's one life, what I call one soul. And so as if we have a one soul concept that will be able to achieve that balance. Once that's achieved, we can reach sustainable happiness, and the right decisions will be made for the right infrastructural balance, for the right technological balance, etc. Now, how do we achieve that? I feel that decision makers, like you'd said, there was a gap. There's a gap in decision making that you asked me in the first question. Can we come together? The gaps close when we are in a state of sustainable happiness. And by that, I don't mean we're laughing all the time. To me, sustainable happiness means we are centered. In that centered process, we are aware. When we are aware, we are able to make the right decisions for the balance of the environment around us. We create an energetic field, and you see that. Some people say you only need a few change makers. But if we as an individual, I know this is cliche, change, and we hear this all the time from everywhere, from Mahatma Gandhi to what BK teaches us. If we change, if each individual changes and creates that field around, you have the serendipity that is created. You realize that the universe, you can trust in the universe. And the universe guides us to the right balance. And that is what I call sustainable happiness, that you can have adversity, you can have problems, because you're always going to have change. But it is how do we flow with that change in balance?
Thanks very much for sharing about the happiness and how to achieve it. I'd like to mention that in India also we are working on solar cookers, and we built 25 years ago institutional solar cookers, and our biggest solar cooker cooks 35,000 meals a day. So technology is out, and I remember when we built these systems, it gave a lot of positive feedback in terms of being proud, being happy to have achieved something, to have built a clean gadget. And all other people who came and seen that system, they have also been positive, inspired. So it's like seeding a small sow of action, and something beautiful will come out, and happiness comes out. And when people are happy, usually everything is improving. That's also one of the lessons we have at all these teachings at the corporate companies. So wonderful. Maureen, this brings me to you. There's an urgency for everybody of us to reduce our carbon footprint. And the Brahma Kumaris is a global organization. We have many followers worldwide. And I heard that the institution has introduced 25 years ago ambitious renewable energy programs. And then we also started yogic farming. And lastly, initiated also Kaltaru tree plantation project. Can you share a bit the background of this project?
Sure, sure. I think that we wanted to show practically that change is possible and a new way of living and working is possible. And I think you were part of that, a very major part of the whole.
I got carried away.
Yeah, but beginning with a little experiment, then growing. And in fact, quite a few years ago, we commissioned a 1 megawatt thermal solar power plant that can provide energy for 25,000 people. I'm looking at you to make sure I've got the figures right. This is near our headquarters in Mount Abu. And in fact, it's concentrated solar technology. And it became a training ground, a training center for UNDP as well, because it was very new technology, because it provides 24/7 operation, which was really cutting edge at the time. So we've really been pioneers. We're actually one of the single biggest institutional users of solar energy in India.
And many of our centers also are adopting the idea.
That's right, many of our centers around India. We've also given many, to rural communities, solar cookers, solar lamps. We have, as I say, many of our centers in India, but also outside of India too. Some of our retreat centers, especially in Australia and in Brazil, they run everything with solar energy. So it shows what's that it really is possible. And of course, the tree plantation and the sustainable yogic agriculture is part of work towards land restoration. Because the land has become so degraded because of the use of chemicals, because of terminator seeds, etc., etc. And so with sustainable yogic agriculture, we actually show the farmers how to meditate at each stage of crop development, from the seed, sowing the seed to the first seedling, and so on. And the results have been researched by universities, and it produces, and it's all organic, more nutritious yield, a better yield, more microbiology in the soil the soil is improved, the nutritional value is improved. So it really has, and of course it helps the mental health of farmers and of the whole community. And of course, once a farmer has a flourishing field because of using sustainable yogic agriculture, other farmers see it, and so the whole thing has spread quite a lot. I think it's about 1,000 or more in India who are employing this method. And it's very beneficial because, you see, in climate change, what needs to be at the heart of it is the well-being of everybody. And well-being on every level, not just physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual, that's central. And of course, the tree planting, I think in about just over a year, over 1 million trees have been planted. And there's also certain healing forests that have been created, where native species of medicinal species are planted. And they also become places where, like sanctuaries where people can go. So again, it's really about benefiting the whole person as well as the land. So yes, these are some of the things we've been involved in.
Wonderful sharing all these stories, and this brings us back to the journey of happiness, what you mentioned before. So it's a small world, and it's all centered around the well-being of people. And once they're happy and feel contented, they do the right things, and that also then reflects in the forest and in the nature. How nice. Kekashan, as per the latest science, we are in for more droughts, heat waves and floods. The outlook and also the current trends are a bit grim right now. Let's see what this COP will bring, but the latest science is so-so. So it's not easy for youngsters to face climate change, as their future becomes blurry and uncertain sometimes. And what keeps you personally also happy and focused, and how you avoid the burnout?
Yeah, another great question. I think just to go back to my earlier point about the word hope being in my organization's name, it's why I named it that, because that hope was always very important. And I knew that I'd have to maintain hope in order to kind of address all of these really horrible things going on around the world. And yeah, it's really the solutions that my team and I implement on a daily basis that gives me hope. And climate is it's such an intersectional issue that with all of the work that we do around the world, we work in 28 different countries with over 500,000 people. And in every single one of those countries and with every single person's life that we're able to impact, like that positive impact is what gives me hope. So it's, as simple as bringing a smile on someone's face, like that gives me hope. I remember when we first started, we worked to install toilets for women and girls in climate disaster zones. So in rural Bangladesh, for example, we started installing the toilets there. And there was this one woman who was in her 70s who just sat through the entire installation because she thought that living in a climate disaster zone for such a long time, because obviously climate change has been impacting the global south for way longer than what we saw in the global north. She never thought that in her lifetime she would actually have that basic human right of having access to a toilet, living in that zone. And for us, being able to provide her with that kind of, that smile is something that gave me hope. When we install solar-powered streetlights also in a lot of climate disaster zones. So rural Bangladesh and rural Liberia, we've done this. And it's providing women and girls with psychological safety, because a lot of them feel unsafe coming out of their homes in the evenings because there's no street lights, increases risk of physical abuse, exploitation, trafficking. And having that one street light, and we install more throughout the roads, provides them with that psychological safety and mental well-being as well, of knowing that, okay, I have the freedom to come out of my home in the evenings. And all of those challenges are exacerbated by climate change. So, that is, we're trying to, in our own small way, address those challenges. And then the girls then feel safe going to school early in the mornings and coming home late in the evenings as well. We see this all across the world, even in more kind of urban global north areas. In my home country, in Canada, in Toronto, we have partnered with the school boards there, many of the school boards there, to provide environmental education and to see the enthusiasm of the children that we work with to, when they go to the turtle hospitals that we work with, to see, how they can help these very innocent creatures that are suffering from the impacts of, human activity and climate change. Seeing that gives me hope. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to remain hopeful, because we see the impacts and the positive impacts of the solutions that we implement across the world. And I feel that even though the future does seem bleak at times, with all of the droughts, the landslides, the floods, and every single terrible thing going on around the world, hope has always kept us going, throughout human history. There's been a lot of terrible things in human history as well. So, and then we've come out of that because there were people that were able to turn that hope into action. And I feel that, we are trying in our own small way to do the same thing.
Great. Very nice to share these stories of hope. And I also heard about the burnout question, that if people work in a nice team, and there's a good communication, this helps a lot to share the burden of what is going on, and that helps to avoid, people fall into this whole depression and all these kind of things,
Absolutely.
Because we met some psychologist when I was in UK, and she shared that she has a lot of young people coming to her clinic now with the students in Oxford. This was with the burnout, and with depression. And it's a big issue how to help them, and to bring hope through action. I think is a very good method. Kanika, so we all heard that climate change is really threatening our modern civilization. And in order to manage the transition, we have to adopt a new paradigm we have to really think out of the box, and whatever is not sustainable, somehow we cannot continue with the old ways, because nature tells us very clearly we have to change. It's like a wake-up call for humanity. So we have to change, and we have to connect to values and strengthen our ethical foundation also to take the right decision. Can you see that humans will be able to rise and change to deal with this challenge? And please share your personal hopes.
So I think humans have the ability for many centuries to adapt and change, whether it's for the better or for the worst. Because I think within ourselves, the root, I go back to energy. So what is the source of all humans? It's energy. What are we? I'm not Kanika, I'm an energy. Sister Maureen is not Sister Maureen. She's an energy. And that energy is what transcends to eternity. So now if we don't look at time as frameworked in terms of, by 2030, what are we going to do, 2040? Then I think time, as we know it, will shorten actually. Because I have seen when you work on energy, things happen around you almost on sixth dimensional time. I have witnessed this at COP this time, in meetings where in parallel things are happening for the good. So can we change? Yes, I think because we have always been changing, we have to focus on that energy, whether negative or positive. And I feel, however, the one paradigm shift that's required is that rather than the new way of starting COP, the new way of starting meetings, if we start that change through spiritual evolution, which is we have devolved, we need to go back. So we start at the root of where energy started. We start at the root of spiritual development. We start with silence. I was talking today earlier that if we had traffic control in COP, in the sessions, I think rather than seeing drained, tired people and decision makers, all of us in negotiations, we would have more creative thinking. So if 8.1 billion people that we are now can put pressure on the earth, imagine 8.1 billion creative ideas to reverse what we have. And that creativity is at the source energy. Because what is creativity? It's life. So if we go back to the source, so again, my paradigm shift and my hope is we start focusing on spiritual evolution more. We start having at decision makers and negotiation tables where we're not just heads of state. We are a mixture of rural, different species. There's telepathy that can communicate if you're observing different species. There's a telepathic interaction. We start looking at youth, elderly, rather than doing, Netflix series on how do you keep your skin young when 100-year-olds are interviewed. How about what worked? And they can contribute rather than going into retirement. So this is the hope that I have for the future, and I feel that's how we'll have a paradigm.
That's quite interesting. You spoke about the energy, that we're energy. In India, it's the concept of Atma, that we're all beings of light or beings of energy. And that's also one of the fundamental teachings of the Brahma Kumaris, that this is one of the root causes of many of the problems, that we have forgotten our true nature. We have lost track who we are actually, and we got lost in the outside world and the activities. And part of the journey is to connect to our deep inner self, and then many things will fall into place. Wonderful. This brings me to Maureen. And slowly we come now to the deep spiritual insights, Maureen. It is said that the most powerful force in the universe is divine love. And it is love. It is said love can heal, and love can change also everything. And love can create wonders. And it seems the world needs now some extra powerful, strong wonders, especially here at the COP. And can you give some inspiration what's needed to experience on a personal level this love, but then also share this divine love with the world, with the people around it, to have some impact?
Well, first of all, as was being shared, the recognition that we are energy, we are souls, Atma, we are souls, and the soul has an original state of being, which is a state of peace, which is a state of love. But it's not a love that needs a reciprocation. It's an unconditional love. But of course, these qualities have become, very much buried because of influence, a huge amount of influence in the world. And especially when we do see, actually, it's just young people. I see if I'm in a meeting with religious leaders, when they're not speaking, I see them getting out their phones. And, so like this influence of technology is just huge. So we have to break through those influences to get back to the essence of who we are. And in that essence, that's where it's possible to then connect with the divine, with that source that is greater than we are. Because we need to connect with a source that is unlimited, that never comes into limitation, a source that is eternally constant. And there's so much change in the world, but we need constancy, which we can find within and in that connection. And in my experience, that love is so powerful that I can absorb into my energy, into the soul, that it makes me feel unconditionally accepted and loved. And so that gives a sense of inner security. And inner security then enables you to step back and do what it is that you need to do. And you're not basing your decisions then or your actions on what other people expect. You're connected and you want that love to work. And so absorbing that love, and one is that it's expressed in our actions and in our relationships and in our presence. But also we can send that vibration of love to the earth, to matter, because matter is filled with the vibrations of the violence in human minds at the moment, and it's as if matter can't hold it anymore. And so can I play my part to actually begin to fill matter with the vibrations of love? This is the task that we need to do.
Wonderful how you shared and explained it. It really brought me into the mood of become very loving with myself, with the world, and then everything is actually being healed, Yeah. It's a quite nice idea and very nice concept. So this brings us to our last and very quick question. Kikashan, can you share in one word what you would like the COP to do? One blessing for the climate conference to become successful?
Action.
Action. Wonderful. That's right. And Kanika, what is your good blessing, your good wish for the COP?
Silence.
Silence, that's very interesting. That's a very deep one. Sister Maureen, what do you wish for the climate conference?
Compassion.
So we have action, silence, and compassion. What an inspiration from our panel for the climate conference. Action, silence, and compassion. Lovely. I think if these three things would be implemented, we will have in no time a good agreement. Fantastic. So time is ticking and we just have a couple of minutes left over. And Maureen, Ben, would it be possible you can guide us in a meditation, let's say, of action, silence, and compassion towards the COP?
Definitely. So be comfortable and take a few moments for an inner journey. A journey of silence to my inner world, where there's no noise, but there are the purest feelings. I come to the heart of the self. And in the heart of the self, I find peace. I find love. I am a being of peace. I am a being of love. And in this awareness, with a single powerful thought, I connect with the source of peace, with the source of love. As I draw that unlimited peace and love into my being, I'm comforted, I'm nurtured, I'm healed. And in my wish for the world, I consciously send those vibrations of that unlimited peace and unlimited love into the atmosphere, to nature, and to every human heart, so that every heart is touched with love, with compassion. And these are the qualities that guide every action. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maureen, to take us beyond in the other realm. And I really could feel how the atmosphere is changing, and everything became light, very loving. And I will remember from this session 3 words: hope, the journey to happiness, and God's love. How nice. I'm sure our audience all around the world is also being inspired by this fantastic panel discussion, and this brings us to the end. Thanks very much for all your most valuable inputs. Really, really great inspirations for our audience. And I like to mention also our patrons and sponsors: the Brahma Kumaris, the Kalpataru Tree Plantation Project, the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative, Radio Madhuban, Yogis for Future, and India Care Trust. I would also like to thank especially the Raja Yoga Center here in Dubai and all the many helpers behind the camera who make this experience, this studio, possible. Please do join us tomorrow for another interesting session. For the program, please look up our webpage www.echo.brahmakumaris.org. And last not least, thanks very much to you, our audience, to staying all the time with us. Thank you very much, and good night and goodbye from Dubai.